If you're a facilities manager at a university, you know students rely on the cafeteria for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and the occasional late-night snack. So when a dishwasher breaks down and dirty plates pile up, the mess hall can turn messy in the blink of an eye. Enter Grainger. With over 1 million industrial-grade products and fast delivery, the product you need now is never far away. So you can turn that dishwasher back into a lean, clean washing machine. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
If you're a maintenance supervisor for a commercial property, you've had to deal with everything from leaky faucets to flickering light bulbs. But nothing's worse than that ancient boiler that's lived in the building since the day it was built, 50 years ago. It's enough to make anyone lose their cool. That's where Grainger comes in. With industrial-grade products and dependable fast delivery, Grainger can help with any challenge, from worn-out components to everyday necessities. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
And you gotta be confident about your Achilles when you show up.
Thornton,
Yeah, I mean, I got it.
and Adam LaRue. Don't hope to be great and dominate.
Well, all right. We're back. It's week 8 with Operation Domination. As always, I'm your host, Dan Mater. Thanks for joining the show. Thanks for catching us live on our YouTube channel with the Fantasy Football Advice Network, as always. And I'm joined here by my two best friends in the world, Chase Thornton and Adam LaRue. How are we doing today, fellas?
Yeah, let's do this.
Damn right, let's do this. Now, I've been out of it for like a week here. And every time I'm out of it, I always lose my place on where these stupid drops are. For some reason, somebody goes in here, there's a little minion who goes in here and changes all my videos around, and then I can't find anything. I'm looking.
Blame it on Chris. He's not here, so you can blame it on him.
Yeah,
for this week.
exactly. The one person who's not here. That's exactly right. Blame it on the person who can't defend themselves. That's what we're all about here. All right, let's hit the break. Okay, so we got something right off the rip. We got to talk about DeAndre Hopkins being traded to the Kansas City Chiefs. All we do is talk about wide receivers that we wish would be traded to the Kansas City Chiefs. And it winds up being DeAndre Hopkins, who is the winner of that pinata. So I kind of like it. From an NFL standpoint, I love it. Okay, because the Chiefs, they don't give up anything. Like draft capital wise, they're not going to have to pay much. And I think DeAndre Hopkins still has enough left to be a productive player on this team. And Adam, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong here, but I look at DeAndre Hopkins now moving forward as a wide receiver 3. He's a savvy vet. It's not going to take him long to get enthralled into this offense. He plays the outside. So now you have Xavier Worthy setting up where he can just do what he does. Like, yes, is there a cap on Xavier Worthy for his targets now moving forward? You thought maybe you get up to like that 26+%. Yeah, that probably goes away. But is he still the boomer bust wide receiver 4 player he has been all season? Yeah, I don't think the value dissipates as a result of DeAndre Hopkins. I guess, Adam, my question here to you is, does DeAndre Hopkins, does he have more potential if they were to say, I don't know, like they do with some of the other veteran receivers, use him as a old vet, big-bodied slot receiver? Because that's where Rashee Rice was really dominating. That seems to be what they're missing. Or do you think Hopkins just stays out to the outside?
I think he stays out to the outside, and that's why I almost wonder if they're optimistic about getting Rashee in the playoffs or something similar to that. Just in the sense Hopkins is someone I think would have made sense if they experienced no injuries, because X was actually the role that felt the weakest going into the season. This would have been something that made sense no matter what, even if Hollywood was still healthy. So that was kind of where it was a little bit weird to me. I definitely, again, I think it's an upgrade, but I think someone who could be more of a power slot. Look, Hopkins is a guy who, I mean, he can definitely make the tough catches over the middle. He can definitely run those routes. He can definitely, do all of those things. I just don't know that he's the especially being someone who, I mean, we had a weird injury scare with him at the beginning of the season. Like, he's not someone who I'm expecting to bring that yak ability that I would want out of that power slot that a guy like Rashee Rice has. That even, like, look, Juju looks like he's running through molasses, but he breaks tackles like a running back. He looks like a power back functionally. It's kind of what he is at this point. So I don't think he brings that, and maybe they will try to use it a little bit. I just think that he's best served playing on the perimeter still. I think it's a good move, and I think, to your point, from what they gave up, great move from an NFL standpoint. Kupp having also come up at the same time, and I know we're going to talk about that, made it feel a little bit weird because he is that power slot that would have been super, super effective. But, again, if you feel like, all right, we're already set for the regular season functionally. If you manage to miss the playoffs at this point, I don't know what happened. Like, hell froze over. So if you're playing for the playoffs, you think you're going to get a guy back, then everything makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. Chase, let's go to our question right now. We got Master Vader. We got a couple people, Binky and Master Vader, in the chat. Make sure you join in, always live on Wednesday nights at 9:30, so we can get to your questions like this. And Master Vader is asking, Dobbs, Monty, or Khalil Shakir? Monty, of course, being David Montgomery. So which one, assuming a flex position, let's assume this is half-point PPR, is what we usually do our rankings off of anyway. Which way would you go in these three?
Assuming health, because we're not sure about Montgomery's knee situation, leg situation right now, but assuming health, I'm going to go with Montgomery. He's just the most stable option of the three, I think. Dobbs has been good when he's played, but you never know from week to week which one of those Green Bay receivers it's going to be. Shakir's been a bit of a disappointment. We're still not necessarily sure how that pass game shakes out now that Amari Cooper is fully in the mix, or we think should be fully in the mix this week. For me, it's Montgomery, assuming health.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Got him ranked up there. Look, you can't bench David Montgomery right now. You can't bench the Detroit Lions running attack. It's simply what it boils down to. I know it's a tough matchup against Tennessee, who've been very good fantasy-wise against running backs, but because they offer nothing offensively, I think Detroit just presses down on their neck in the second half, and it's just not going to matter at the end of the day. Let's go to the rest of our breaking news here. So Alvin Kamara signs a 2-year extension. He was somebody who was talked about maybe he was on the trading block. Clearly not. And Alvin Kamara comes out today, so he's been playing with a broken hand on top of it. We'll get that tomorrow when I talk to Dr. Brian Scott at 8 o'clock. It hasn't affected his play, or as far as his availability anyway, for that matter. But, Chase, when we look at Alvin Kamara, what do you think about this extension here? What do you think this says about him moving forward for fantasy purposes?
I mean, I think it shows that they're still really confident in him, and that they still really think that he is a big part of what they want to do and a big part of how they want to structure their offense going forward, regardless of who the quarterback is, regardless of, whatever their offensive situation is. He's been a surprise to me, quite honestly. To me, I had thought he looked like he was falling off a little bit. I think that was part of the conversation surrounding him, but he has been fantasy-wise really good. He hasn't been all that efficient necessarily this season. If you take a look at his stats, he's only averaging 3.9 yards a carry, but he's scoring like a madman. He's been about the one more or less consistent part of that offense. They started out like gangbusters, and then they went on this giant losing streak, but he has continued for the most part to be able to score you some fantasy points. I think it shows that they still want him to be a big part of this offense. I think it shows that you can still.
No, and with that, we lost Chase, apparently. He was in the middle of giving us a great breakdown there.
There we go. I think that as their offensive situation continues to improve with their quarterback situation, that his numbers will continue to be right up there where you want them as he's on the field. So good on him. Good for getting the bag, and good for all of us who maybe have him on our rosters, because I think it shows that we don't have to worry about him.
Yeah. Chase, I'm going to call you out there. For those in the podcast, I apologize because you couldn't see this, but Chase is very selfish because he could not finish his analysis. He kicked us all off the screen and then brought us back on so that way he could actually finish it all the way together. Adam here, now I got Adam's face getting blocked by the question. But Adam, I want you to answer this question from Andre. In a half point PPR, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex. He has Puka coming back. I don't know. Hold on. I'm going to say this, Andre. I know he's questionable. I'd be a little bit surprised if Puka actually played tomorrow night. I think it's more likely he plays in week 9. But regardless, he's coming back. His receivers are CeeDee Lamb, Drake London, Malik Neighbors, Puka, Jaden Reed. Should I be moving on one of them? Running backs are Alvin Kamara and James Cook. I would say you can afford to. But Adam, what do you think here? What would you do?
Yeah, I would definitely be looking to see if there's a running back that you can go ahead and buy. We'll, I'm sure throughout the shows, throw out some names that make some sense. I'm trying to think on who might be an actual good move off the top. There's none that I can think of, but I would definitely consider, some options for those guys. Maybe float some options out to your league, or see if there's anyone who in your league is disillusioned with one of their running backs.
Well, I'll throw one out the top because I've actually been thinking about this a little bit myself. And he brings up Jaden Reed. Now, Jaden Reed is somebody that I do think is going to be a bit more hit or miss, especially compared to the other wide receivers he has there.
Sure.
But I would offer up a Jaden Reed, especially if you can get his handcuff. It's a redraft league for a James Conner type who has a great schedule the rest of the way. And if Trey Benson's available in that waiver wire and you can go ahead and protect yourself with that investment, that's a move I think I would make. James Conner's going to hover around that top 12 running back position with a great schedule the rest of the way. And then if you have Trey Benson there, you're protected in case Conner gets that yearly injury that he hasn't had so far. And, maybe knock on wood, this is the year he doesn't get it. So kind of keep that in mind. That's one I have off the top of my head. Okay, so let's talk a little Cooper Kupp. He's reportedly on the trade block, reportedly. But as we found out with the Chiefs deal, and this was from Diana Rossini, the Chiefs didn't make the deal because, one, it sounds like the Rams either want a high draft pick or they want the team they trade him to eat a lot of the money. The Chiefs wanted somebody who could do both, which is why they made the deal for DeAndre Hopkins. Chase, in your opinion, if those are going to be the parameters, either a high draft pick or somebody eats a lot of the money, do you really think Cooper Kupp even gets moved?
Check engine light on? Take the guesswork out of your check engine light with O'Reilly Veriscan. It's free. Ask for O'Reilly Veriscan today.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
If you're a maintenance supervisor for a commercial property, you've had to deal with everything from leaky faucets to flickering light bulbs. But nothing's worse than that ancient boiler that's lived in the building since the day it was built, 50 years ago. It's enough to make anyone lose their cool. That's where Grainger comes in. With industrial-grade products and dependable fast delivery, Grainger can help with any challenge, from worn-out components to everyday necessities. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily convinced he goes anywhere. I kind of hope he doesn't. I'm glad to be finally getting him back because I have him on a ton of my redraft rosters. And I'm excited to finally have him available for me for the first time since week 1 when he saw 20 targets. Listen, I love Cooper Kupp. I think there's a lot of teams out there he could help, not the least of which is one of the teams down there in Florida right now who is hurting after last week. But I'm not convinced that they move him necessarily at all. Like you said, the price, if those reports are true, seems pretty steep for to add a guy in the middle of the season. It's not Madden. I'm not convinced he moves. I think he's fine right where he's at too. If he does move, I'm hanging on to him wherever I've got him because it's still Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, my butthole puckered up a little bit when I heard these trade rumors because I've been waiting for Cooper Kupp to come back too in several leagues, and I'm like, please play on Thursday for the love of God. I'm dying here. I had Chris Godwin. He's out for the rest of the year now. I need Cooper Kupp so bad. Chase, go ahead and help me out with Alex's question here. Half point PPR, start 2. Deebo Samuel, Tank Dell, Brian Thomas Jr., Devonta Smith, Njoku, or Alexander Madison?
We're not sure necessarily yet about Deebo's health. If Deebo's healthy, I'm inclined to want to roll him out there, regardless of what the matchup is going on there, because now that they're missing Ayuk, I think that Deebo has to be a big part of what they do no matter what going forward. Wait to see how he's doing health-wise, though. For me, it's probably Devonta Smith. And honestly, even though there's the quarterback change this week, I'm kind of bigger on Njoku than I am on some of the other guys on that list right now. Brian Thomas Jr. I'll talk about later on, but I don't necessarily love that matchup going in with Green Bay coming in. Madison, I don't want any part of that Raiders offense that's not named Brock Bowers. And there's just too much going on right now in most of those other situations. Devontae Smith and Njoku, I'm most high on this week.
Interesting. I like the Njoku a lot too, especially with Jameis Winston starting. I'm with you on the Debo thing. Here's one update I'll give you. And again, a little prelude to tomorrow, 8 p.m. Make sure you tune in at Fantasy Football Advice Network on our social media feed, whether it's Facebook or Twitter. That's where we go live at on Thursdays, and we drop the video later on Friday morning on YouTube. But Debo was seen running off to the side. So the fact that he's already running, I feel pretty good. That means he's going to actually be able to play. So it would be Debo. I'm not sleeping on Tank Dell. But there's no way I'm not playing Devonta Smith in that game against Cincinnati. And we're going to talk about that game a little bit later, too. All right. So now it is time for the DFS cocktail hour.
Oh, all right. Now, listen. If I seem a little off my game, everybody, I am tired as all hell. I tossed and turned all night, which is why I was awake at 5 this morning when the news broke about the DeAndre Hopkins trade and was able to grab him off of some, free agent wires after everybody else's waivers ran. So I'm on the espresso, as I like to say right now. Duncan is keeping me awake till after this show. So it's time to wind down with a cocktail for the week for DFS. And this week, we're going to be making a Scotch whiskey sour, and we're going to be making it old school here. We're going to go with a single malt Scotch whiskey, and we're going to make it with the traditional old school ingredients here, a Scotch sour. So if you look at the lines for this week, as we go into our, actually, you know what? Let's take this question real quick before we get into
right before we get into it. I want Adam to answer this one from David here. Thanks for joining, David. Would you suggest JSN or Tank Bigsby in a standard league?
Pending, I'd watch the status on ETN throughout the week, but if it looks like he's even, questionable going into it, right, to where you're worried about snap count for ETN, he can still play. I'm not saying don't play him if ETN's playing, but I am saying, you want there to be some level of concern in regards to ETN to want to play Bigsby, I think, over JSN. But if there's even that, like I said, even if he carries a questionable into Sunday, I'm thumbs up going Tank.
Yeah, when you're in standard leagues, you're dependent upon touchdowns.
Right.
I know
you want the running back unless the opportunity's real low.
Yeah, exactly. I know DK Metcalf's out, but JSN he hasn't really been getting the job done so far this year. So I'm with you. If ETN's in question at all, Tank Bigsby it is. All right, Chase, I want to hear more about the Scotch sour and what my DFS lineup's going to look like.
All right. So when we're looking at the lines this week, there's not a lot of giant point totals for these games, but there are some big favorites or big dogs, however you want to look at it, whether you're an optimist or a pessimist here. So the game that we're going to be focusing on to build our cocktail around as we get our shaker out here for building this cocktail, we're going to be looking at the Eagles at the Bengals. Okay. This is the game. This is one of the games with the highest point total over under the week at 48 there. Cincinnati is a 2.5 point favorite here at home. Last I checked here, and these are a couple of offenses that, should be able to put some points on the board. Cincinnati has looked good, especially since Higgins has come back. They look like they can actually run the ball too. Philadelphia looks like they should be able to get, make some points. Barkley coming off a huge game last week. AJ Brown back now. They should be swinging on all cylinders there. So that's the game that we're going to be focusing on this week. And we're going to start off actually on the Cincinnati side of things with Joe Burrow at 7,000 here. Joe Burrow is, towards the higher end of the cost spectrum right now here on DraftKings, but I like his chances here against this Philadelphia defense here. Philadelphia, hasn't been they've given up some points to quarterbacks, but they've been tough on the position overall. But with the higher point total, with this game being the shootout that I think it can be, and because Philadelphia tends to give up some points to wide receivers, and I like the receivers that Burrow has to throw to, I'm willing to take my chances here with him at 7,000. We're going to pair him this week in that game with T. Higgins. We're going to pair him with T. Higgins because, to be honest with you, Jamar Chase is the most expensive player on the slate this week at $8,500. That would severely limit us elsewhere. Higgins has looked great so far. I think he has really unlocked the potential of everyone else in that offense by virtue of being back on the field here and being available again. So we're going to go with Higgins there at 6,500, save ourselves, $2,000 on the budget there over Jamar Chase. If you want to play Chase, I get it. He's one of the top 2 options this week, probably in fantasy football. But I'm going to try and save some money there with Higgins, and I still think we can come out of that with some good return for the value for the dollar there. So across from them in this game, we are going to play, and we kind of mentioned him earlier. Somebody asked a question about it, and I brought up Devontae Smith. Again, A.J. Brown, expensive as all get out this week, and he should be because we expect him to put some points on the board. But Devontae Smith is another guy that I think can score a lot of points in this game if it becomes a shootout that we think it should be. Cincinnati here, they're middle of the road against opposing wide receivers. But with this game, being one of the higher point totals with them supposedly, scoring some points here this week, I think there's points enough to go around. I like Devonta Smith against what that Cincinnati Bengals offense can do there. So that's who we're going to go with here as we, like I said, get out the shaker and we build our core for this drink and for this DFS cocktail around that Philadelphia-Cincinnati game. Okay, so then it's time to actually get into building this cocktail, and the meat, shall we say, of what we're going to be doing here is going to be a single malt scotch. We're going to go with Glenmorangie, the Nectar d'Or. Nectar d'Or meaning like of gold, nectar of gold here from Glenmorangie. It's a Speyside single malt scotch. I love this. This is one of my favorite brands, and it's one of my favorite varieties that they have here that they do. We need 2 ounces of that. We're not going to fill our shaker with ice yet. That's going to come later because there's a kind of a special surprise coming up in this cocktail. So we're going to go 2 ounces of that.
All right. Well, while you pour that, I want Adam to help me out with Mr. Light Jr.'s question here. He traded Zach Moss and Keenan Allen for J.K. Dobbins. Adam, what do you think about that deal?
I'd have to know a little bit more about the league, I think, to sway me either way. I think in standard, for instance, I'm definitely for it. It seems like Chase Brown has fully taken over the red zone running back share for Cincinnati, and Keenan Allen is more of a guy who I would want in a PPR. So if you're in standard, I love it. Half-point PPR, probably lukewarm towards leaning towards zero end, and PPR a little less interested.
I think that's all very, very fair. Okay, Chase, keep giving me the drink, man. I'm thirsty.
All right, so we've got 2 ounces of our single malt scotch, our Glenmorangie Nectar d'Or, and that is going to be Bijan Robinson. We're going to pay up a little bit for that running back this week. Bijan in Atlanta there, facing off against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that, as we talked about, has lost like every receiving weapon they've ever had, going all the way back to the 70s, it seems like, here in the on Monday night. Atlanta is right now a 2.5-point favorite on the road, as on the road as Atlanta to Tampa Bay is, but they're a 2.5-point favorite on the road with that offense having to rediscover itself there in Tampa Bay. I expect that Atlanta might have a little bit easier time of things. They should be up in this game. They should be able to run the ball behind Bijan Robinson. And, this is a Tampa Bay team that already gives up the 11th most points to opposing fantasy running backs. So I expect Bijan to be able to eat. I am happy to pay up for him this week at 7,200. So that's going to be the scotch in this drink here. Then we're going to move on to 3/4 of an ounce of freshly squeezed lemon juice. We're going to put that here in our shaker. And that 3/4 of an ounce of lemon juice is going to equate to another part of that same game that I just talked about, Bijan Robinson and the Falcons as the favorites over Tampa Bay. We're going to use the Falcons DST this week in DFS. The Falcons DST is pretty cheap actually for the week at 2,600. Now, they have not been a great defense, but as I said, I expect this Tampa Bay team to be trying to kind of reinvent and refine themselves, missing their not just their top 2 receivers, but 2 of the top receivers right now in the league so far this season in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. The Falcons here, they give up, they have been a good team against running backs. They haven't necessarily been a great team against wide receivers, but they're not going to have to worry about the wide receivers in this game, I don't think. So I'm happy to pay for that Falcons team. It's going to save us some money there in that DST slot at 2,600. That's going to be 3/4 of an ounce of lemon juice in here. That's going to be the sour portion of this single malt scotch sour here. Then we're going to add a 1/2 ounce of simple syrup to sweeten things up, and that's going to be Kimani Vidal from the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, Chargers this week, 7.5 point favorites at home. Facing, it is a bold statement. I like J.K. Dobbins in this game too, but J.K. Dobbins is a little rich for our blood this week since we've paid up elsewhere. Kimani Vidal, I think, can have a good time against this New Orleans defense too, even if J.K. Dobbins eats. I mean, we're talking about a team here in New Orleans, a defense that has given up a ton of points lately to all kinds of different teams. We just saw them give up big points to both Sean Tucker and Bucky Irving. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, the Saints give up the 5th most points to opposing running backs. I still think, even if J.K. Dobbins eats, which I expect him to in this game, that there's room for Vidal to score us some points. If he gets us in the end zone, he should return great value there at 5,300. Okay, so then we're going to move on to what I mentioned was the surprise of this drink and kind of the retro portion of things. We're going to add a 1/2 ounce of fresh egg white that we've already separated out here. We're going to put that in there. Now, I want to mention real quick as a public service announcement, raw egg. You want to be careful using raw egg. You want to make sure that it's fresh, and you're always kind of taking a little bit of your health in your hands in terms of salmonella. Okay, you're welcome with that. If it scares you a little bit, there's good news. You don't have to use egg white. 95% of the cocktails that call for egg white are using it purely for texture and not necessarily for flavor, taste, or balance. If you don't put egg white in this cocktail, you're still going to get a nice sweet and sour mix there, a nice spice there from the single malt scotch. You don't have to use it. The other thing you can think about, though, too, is if you still want that body in there and that protein, you can use the pasteurized egg whites that you get out of the carton. It's just that it won't froth up and foam up quite so much as it will if it's a fresh egg white. So don't anybody be too scared off that, that I'm putting egg white in this drink here. You can do it safely, and it's not a problem. But the egg white in this drink is going to be our tight end, and we're going to go with Dalton Schultz this week at 4,100. Okay, now Dalton Schultz has had a rough time of things lately. We know last week that the Packers held the Houston Texans to 86 yards passing. That was a rough go of things. But prior to that, coming in, we had seen Dalton Schultz get plenty of targets in that offense. We know they've been dealing with Nico Collins being out, and they're not fully all together. They're just getting Joe Mixon back into the swing of things again. But prior to last week, Dalton Schultz actually had a good run of targets going. We're going to pay 4,100 for him. That's not a ton of money at the tight end position. I think he can return us good value there for the dollar there. So that's going to be our egg white. So now it's come time to shake this up with no ice in it. The reason we're shaking this is because with the egg white in it, we're going to put a lot of body in there, and we got to really be vigorous and shake this up. So while I do that, for about 30 seconds, I'm going to turn it over to you guys because we have to pick our wide receiver 3 and our flex position. So our wide receiver 3 is where we're going to go first. We've got not a ton of money to spend here, but we do have some options that I like this week if everything falls right. So here's the 4 options I'm going to give you guys for wide receiver 3, and you guys can debate about it amongst yourselves while I shake this thing up here. Jalen Waddle at 5,400. If his health holds and if we see Tua back, I don't mind him in that slot because I think Tua coming back is the straw that stirs that drink over there, to use a drink metaphor there. It's been frustrating as all hell with him out. Trust me, as a guy that came out of my home league draft in the first 3 rounds with Tyreek Hill, Derrick Henry, and Cooper Kupp and thought I was smooth sailing, I've been missing Tua Tagovailoa like nobody else. So Jalen Waddle at 5,400 is one option there we could use. Dontavian Wicks at 5,300 there against those Jacksonville Jaguars. We've kind of been going to that well, but he's been very efficient with the work that he has seen there. And he seems like he has supplanted Christian Watson in every way, shape, or form as that third option on that offense. 38 targets to 14 targets on the season.
Watson still played more snaps the last 2 weeks and ran more routes. So I don't.
But he can be out there all day long. But as a guy who is a Packer fan, he's basically a taller, less consistent Deshaun Jackson running routes at this point. I
think they're interchangeable. Look at
but either way, well, and if you do see him as such, Christian Watson only costs you $5,200 this week. So again, they are interchangeable in our lineup as well. But so there's Waddle, there's Wicks, Watson. If you want to go that direction, I want to steer clear of that. Cortland Sutton is $5,300 if that excites you in any way, shape, or form, or Roma Dunze at $5,100. So between those four guys, Dan, why don't you go ahead first and tell us your thought while I get this shit up here?
It's Waddle. I don't think this is a question in my mind. This is exactly where I'm going. I have a lot of DFS lineups where I've already teamed up Tua and Tyreek Hill. And then on the backside of that and some others to get some versatility, I've got Waddle in there. The Dolphins, this is a great game against Arizona because not only is it a great matchup, but even if the Dolphins get up by a few scores, I think they're going to pour it on. They have been so needing an offensive production with Tua coming back. I think they'll take advantage of it, that if they're humming, they're going to hum for all it's worth. And I think everybody's going to be able to eat as a result of that. So yeah, I'm all in on Waddle. What do you think, Adam?
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I think it's one of the better gambles of the week in general, is just gambling on the Dolphins offense to do something. Just given how putrid it's been for so long. I again, totally with you. And look, the Arizona team is feisty enough that I would favor Miami pretty confidently. However, they can hang in there just enough so that you're not pulling starters too early.
No, agreed. All right, what do you got next, Chase?
All right, well, now that we've got that shook up here, now we're going to add our ice to our shaker. And we can move on to our flex position here as I'm going to shake this to chill. We have $5,300 left here to spend. Exactly. So here's who's available to us right there at $5,300. And then we can kind of work our way down from there if we're not excited by any of these possibilities. There's still the aforementioned Dontavian Wicks or Cortland Sutton at $5,300. There's Ray Davis against Seattle at $5,200. Sean Tucker is $5,200 against Atlanta. Braylon Allen for the Jets against New England is $5,200 as well. Calvin Ridley, if he's healthy, now that he doesn't have to deal with having DeAndre Hopkins.
Let me stop you right there. Let me stop you right there. Okay.
Go ahead.
Because I got a perfect play for you. And I've been doing this everywhere.
All right.
Cedric Tillman is $3,300 playing against the Baltimore Ravens with 11 targets. That would open up $2,000. Now, I don't want us to go backtrack after you've already made your drink, but that would open up a whole lot of cash. Cedric Tillman is a must play for the price point that he is, with Jameis Winston taking the field and going in there. Jerry Jeudy is a ghost. Elijah Moore is a ghost. Cedric Tillman, David Njoku were the ones coming in and getting all the targets this past week without Amari Cooper. And I like it that much more with Winston. Tillman being somebody I've liked for a while now. I think Adam will attest to that.
Yeah, no, I'm going to save what I have to say about Tillman for a little bit later in the show. But,
okay.
I'm on board.
I'm not going to argue with that at all, because I love Tillman as well. In fact, I've been talking about him all day elsewhere. I love Cedric Tillman. I agree with you. I think he is by far the alpha going forward in that offense, because Jerry Jeudy is just not a thing. He's not going to be a thing, in my opinion. It's just not. And that offense with Jameis Winston turning it loose, and if somebody's down there somewhere, the way that he likes to throw the ball, I like Cedric Tillman in that. And like you said, that would free up $2,000 if we do want to go back then and play somebody like an A.J. Brown in that same matchup, or if we want to go back and spend that money to maybe use Dobbins instead of Vidal in that matchup against those Saints. So I'm not going to argue with that at all. So there you have it. I mean, hey, we've built things. We're going to shake this up a little bit just to chill it. And as we add some ice to our rocks glass here, we are going to pour out our sour Scotch sour here. It's gonna be a little bit cloudy. It's gonna have, because of that egg froth in there. As that sits, that'll foam up. You'll get almost like a little nice foamy head on that thing. We're gonna put our garnish on there. Garnish this week is just gonna be a couple of drops of bitters for some color on the top and for some aroma. I happen to like bitters too for the flavor they give. But there's your DFS cocktail for the week. We've gone Burrow, Bijan, Vidal, or maybe with the money we saved on Cedric Tillman, we could afford to pay up and get ourselves a Dobbins if we want there against New Orleans. T. Higgins, Devontae Smith, some combination of those receivers there in that Philadelphia-Cincinnati game. We've talked about Jalen Waddle being a good value this week, especially if Tua is back. Dalton Schultz, Cedric Tillman, I like that you said that, and I'm not going to argue that at all. And then that Falcons defense. So, hey, Slanjava, everybody, enjoy that. Like I said, if you don't want to add that egg to it, don't worry about it. It's still going to taste really good.
All right, I know Chris isn't here, but I can love it. I love this week. The dominating defense of the week. It's only one defense. It's only one. And it is the Denver Broncos. Welcome back, Bryce Young, who made every defense the number one defense of every single week to kick off the season. Bryce Young's back. Andy Dalton, unfortunately, in a car accident, not going to play with the thumb issue. Bryce Young here, Denver defense in my line.
Yeah, we are back to the Dynasty temperature check. And first of all, I just want to say, I'm very excited about that Bryce Young start, and I'm sorry about this tangent, but I have to say it. And you want to know why I'm very excited about it? Because I'm excited about it because we were starting to get the talks again, right? Like, Andy Dalton hasn't done enough. I think everyone needs a good refresher without Dalton being
as to why he was in there in the first place.
Right, but without Dalton being like officially benched, like it's injury, right? So they can go back to Dalton and act like nothing ever happened. I think everyone needs a good reminder of who Bryce Young is a NFL.
Can't lose your spot because of injury. Yep.
I can't agree more, Adam. I cannot agree more. It was driving me nuts too. I'm with you on that one.
But moving on to some other guys, and including a quarterback who I'm sure has some similar emotions for people on this show. But we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna start off. Chase, we're gonna go with you. Amari Cooper. He is the most traded player overall on my database so far after getting a touchdown in his Bills debut, obviously getting traded last week. He's up 4 spots on Keep Trade Cut. He's the wide receiver 39 over there. As far as dynasty rankings go, I expect him to keep moving in the positive direction there. And then on the ECR, he is the wide receiver 19. So Chase, I got to ask you, is that someone, are you, liking the early return? Or do you feel like it was, we just traded for the guy, we wanted to get him a touch in the end zone. We'll see what happens. It's kind of, it was a weird, can't pull much from.
Yeah, I'm not overly excited about Amari Cooper dynasty wise, based on his age, and then he's been around a long time. I mean, hey, he got in the game right away. He's playing with a much better quarterback than he's dealt with the last several seasons. So if you feel like he can help your team and you want to go out, I'm not spending a ton for him, to be dead honest with anybody. He's somebody that I do have in some of my dynasty leagues, and I've had some offers on him this week, and I'm tempted to take some of them because I'm ready to move on from him. He's not going to be the needle mover that I want to see in dynasty. So I'm willing to part with him for the right price.
Yeah, and apologies there. I didn't give you some example trades. Some examples are 2026 round 2. James Conner is a name that shows up a lot. 1-for-1 James Conner for Amari Cooper. We have Kirk Cousins and a 4, which is maybe a little bit low, but Jalen McMillan and a 2 for Amari Cooper. We have a 2027 round 1, so a 2026 round 2 or a 2027 round 1. Again, James Conner shows up a ton there, so definitely some interesting options in there.
If somebody wants to give me McMillan and a 2, I would jump on that in dynasty.
Yeah, no doubt.
I mean, unless I am right there at the cusp of a championship and I need all the firepower I can get. And you still might be getting firepower from Jalen McMillan due to the situation that he finds himself in after Monday night. Yeah, I'm ready to move on from Cooper.
Cool. So not a strong jump for you on Amari Cooper. I tend to agree. I think that was a get you in the end zone. We just got you. I think he's going to be great rest of the season. But I don't think he's a glorious asset or anything. If I got a 1 out of him, especially if, there's a decent chance my team's in the situation to be selling off assets if I've been starting Amari Cooper through the beginning of the season. So, if I'm in that situation, I'm pretty happy with the potential return. Dan, we're going to go with you here. We have the quarterback I was referring to, and that is Russell Wilson. Big debut. The announcers were loving the moon balls, as they were calling them, the rainbows that he was throwing. Big game, throwing deep to George Pickens, who, for all credit, George Pickens was fantastic.
He played a great game.
Regardless of what we're going to say about Russell Wilson, he was fantastic in that game. Russell Wilson is the second most traded quarterback in these Dynasty Superflex half-point PPR leagues over the last week and a half. He is the 16th overall most traded player during the same time frame over the last month in Keep Trade Cut. He is up 7 spots to the QB 31. In the ECR, he is QB 21. Give me some initial thoughts while I give you some potential trades. But how did you feel about his first start as a Pittsburgh Steeler?
I just really hope that Russell Wilson got a fruit basket or something for George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth for all the one-handed catches that they were getting with throws that were off-center and YOLO balls. I mean, that's what they moon ball. They're YOLO balls and they weren't accurate. The receivers made great. George Pickens was great. They made great plays. Yeah. And with the performance of Russell Wilson too, look, I wasn't impressed. Okay, I wasn't that impressed. Did it go well against the Jets defense that was hurting? Yeah, it did. But he depended on his players to make plays. The only silver lining I took out of that game, I didn't see a Russell Wilson I thought was better than Justin Fields. I saw an Arthur Smith willing to actually open up the offense. Now, if he's only willing to open up the offense with Russell Wilson, then fine. Yes, this is what they have to do moving forward. But I didn't see anything Wilson did that Justin Fields couldn't do or hasn't done in the past, and he's been protective of the ball this year. So, I don't know. I wasn't that impressed. If you could, whatever trades you're going to give me, if I could trade off Russell Wilson for a box of rocks in Dynasty especially, I'm going to do it. So, hit me with what you got.
Yeah, so he's going for roughly a second-round pick overall. There's some player trades, but that's the gist of it. Ramondre Stevenson is a name that I found really interesting. But overall, it's a lot of trades for picks with him. It's, contender sending some late seconds to go get an extra super flex option, which makes sense because I think at this point in this career, that is what you're expecting for Russell Wilson. And to that point, I do think that there's worse super flex QB2s or a 3 especially, just a bye week type of guy. But I think there's better ones as well.
Well, I want to know what these leagues are because I've been trying to trade Aaron Rodgers off for Superflex for forever and have not been able to get anything close to a late second. So if you could do that, yeah,
Aaron Rodgers, I'm in the same boat. Aaron Rodgers specifically has been a very tough one to sell, which is crazy because he's actually been, from a fantasy perspective,
for a QB2, he's fine.
Yeah. No, I'm
great schedule coming up, by the way. Like, take note of that, people who are in my Dynasty League. Great schedule coming up, Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. Get on the DMs. Let me know.
So we have one more guy we're going to talk about here. That is Chris Godwin, and this is an interesting case because it's what makes Dynasty in particular a little bit interesting, right? Because this is a guy who we're done for the season, and now we're kind of price checking. All right, like if you are rebuilding. And Chase, I'm going to actually both of you chime in quickly, but I'm curious your thoughts if you are rebuilding, especially a more short-term rebuild, because I like to think of it as there's the rebuild of, I've been punting like the Saints have been doing, and then finally I just need to shut the whole thing down and start over, and that's going to take a couple seasons. And then there's I came into this season trying to win, didn't work out, sold off some of the old guys, and I'm going to use those assets to potentially buy some guys back, pick some players, and try to compete next season. And I think that's the situation where we're talking about Chris Godwin, right? Is this season went poorly, maybe injury, sell off some guys, maybe get a Chris Godwin type of guy into your room. To read a little bit about Chris Godwin, he is the 9th most traded wide receiver, but that's the most traded position over the time period. So he's actually the 12th most traded player. Keep trade cut. He is still up because that is the lowest scale that they'll give me is over a month. He's only +2. I imagine he was much higher than that. He is starting to slip over there. Then obviously on the ECR, he is NA. So that's what you're looking at there. But if you're interested in someone like Chris Godwin to bring into a dynasty, again, if you're in the rebuild situation, some moves that have gone down are Josh Downs in a 3, a 2nd round pick for Chris Godwin, and a 3 Ramondre Stevenson straight up, Amari Cooper straight up, Chris Godwin and a 2 in return for Mark Andrews, Chris Godwin for Deontay Johnson, Chris Godwin for Stephon Diggs, DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, those are, if you're interested in having Chris Godwin for next year and, you're confident in him next year, those are some pretty good deals. So I'm curious, quickly, both of your thoughts.
Well, I would gladly give up DeAndre Hopkins for Chris Godwin's future. I mean, if we know that Chris Godwin can re-sign here in Tampa Bay, we've said it before on this show about this situation with Chris Godwin, but they put him finally back where he needs to be and where he can be successful. This was about the most perfect situation he could have been in, playing out of the slot more, being thrown and being asked to run the kind of routes that he can excel at. The marriage of him and Baker and Liam Cohen and that whole offense with Evans still doing what Mike Evans does on the outside was a beautiful situation. And he's going to be 29 to start next season. So he's not old for a wide receiver. He still has some usable seasons left if he comes out of this dislocated ankle surgery. Okay. If I could give up somebody like DeAndre Hopkins and Chris Godwin back, I'd jump on that. I'd be happy to have him in Dynasty.
Dan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, with the Chris Godwin injury, remember, guys, that this is not something that's going to linger on to next season. He's going to be fine by next year. In fact, if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers go a deep run in the playoffs, he could be back. It might be unlikely, but he could be back. So you're going to get a 29-year-old Chris Godwin, I don't really care what team he's on, who's going to be ready to go and still probably have another 2 years left of his prime. So yeah, if you could acquire Chris Godwin, it's kind of not a silly, but an interesting situation where I want Chris Godwin whether I'm rebuilding or whether I'm trying to win, because if you give me 2 to 3 years in Dynasty, even in a rebuild, that's all I'm really looking for. And I think he falls in that boat still. So I like him either way. I'm trying to acquire him anywhere I possibly can for whatever I possibly can.
Totally. All right, cool. That'll be the segment.
Well, before we jump over to big time prop bets, Jonathan came in. Do I trade Kelsey for Puka? I already have Otten and Jake Ferguson. Adam, go ahead and answer that question.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a resounding yes from
that's
every
all that had to be. Yeah.
One of us. All right, it is time for big time prop bets. We got 3 quarterbacks for you guys here today. Hey, Josh Allen, gotta love him on the over for his passing yards. He gets Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper doesn't even know the plays, and Josh Allen finally has his first 300-yard passing day last week. It was absolutely incredible. And yes, they're going up against a team, or no, they went up against a team that was allowing the second least passing yards this season, the Tennessee Titans. They go up against Seattle, who's middle of the pack. Yeah, I love it for Josh Allen. He's only been averaging 27 pass attempts this season so far per game. That's going to go up now that he finally has a go-to option in Amari Cooper. And a game that could be a little bit back and forth because Seattle likes to throw the ball themselves. So again, I like the over with Josh Allen at 233.5. I think. Thank you, Chase, for the backup there. Kyler Murray. All right, Kyler Murray. Ooh, I want to go under on Kyler Murray at 208.5 passing yards this week. Guess what? He's been under 200 yards passing 4 of his 7 games so far this season. He doesn't look like he's a good fit in this scheme with Drew Petzing. They're trying to ask him to do things that Kyler Murray simply cannot do, like line up under center more often. He can't see over the line, guys. Stop trying to make it happen. You got to go back to shotgun. It's been brutal. And Miami, look, I don't know if it's because Miami is just so easy to run on that their passing stats look so good, or their secondary is actually decent. It might be a mixture of both. But Kyler Murray here has not been playing well. The Dolphins have allowed the least amount of passing yards so far this season. I don't like Kyler Murray getting over his props. I'm hitting the under at 208.5 passing yards. Joe Burrow, 1.5 passing touchdowns. Hey, you guys know Burrow's thrown 2 or more in last 5 of 6 games, going up against a Philadelphia Eagles defense that's been leaky at best in an over-under matchup of 48 between these two teams where points are going to be scored. Yeah, give me Joe Burrow this week. He's actually a top 5 player for me at the quarterback position. I love the over at 1.5 passing touchdowns. And that is your big time.
And I'll crush you like a paper cup.
All right, it is time for Crush or Bust. This is my segment. You guys get your segment. I finally get my segment in here. Before we go with that, though, we do have a question coming in from Twitch. Potato juice. Ooh, I don't know about potato juice. It's vodka, though. Do I give CeeDee Love and Chase Brown for David Montgomery, Deebo Samuel, and Chuba Hubbard? Ooh, Lou. Chase, what do you go here?
No.
Yeah,
No.
I echo that sentiment as well. I don't even think we need to go further into that. So, Adam, I want to talk to you, man. I want you to back me up here. I mentioned him earlier in the show. Who is your crush of the week?
Yeah, look, this is not a guy who I think, regardless of format you're starting, I want to at least temper expectations for what I'm about to say a little bit. But look, if you have, say, 2 wide receiver spots and 2 flex spots or 3 wide receiver spots, in those situations, I think Cedric Tillman is a must start. I think he's right there on the fringes of wide receiver 3 for me. That may sound a little egregious. I know we haven't seen a whole lot from him season long. But first of all, the ECR 51 is ridiculous. Let's be clear there. 51 is ridiculous for a guy who just caught 100% of his contested catches with Dorian Thompson-Robinson at quarterback, who was about to get Jameis Winston. And look, Ravens have been fantastic. Their secondary has not played the bestest, and they just lost Marlon Humphrey. I know the injury did not come out to be as serious as it seemed night of, but it still seems unlikely he's playing this game in particular. So just between that, look, candidly, Browns, this is a 10-point spread. I haven't checked it in a couple days, but it certainly was when the lines opened a few days ago. They're going to be passing the ball. Jameis Winston will throw some contested catches to a big target wide receiver. We want to talk about some guys who are in that end wide receiver range, so you can spot check me if I'm insane here. We're talking about guys like Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy. We're talking about Khalil Shakir. We're talking about Ladd McConkey, who has a good matchup in his own right. But nonetheless, Wan'Dale Robinson, Calvin Ridley. I'm sorry, the overwhelming majority of those guys, I'd much rather take the upside of Cedric Tillman, the guy who got 12 targets last week.
Just for the record, I have Cedric Tillman up as my wide receiver 35. So he is in my lineup coming this week right there. We got a question coming in from Turgay Kaglar. I have to choose 2 receivers and 1 either receiver or tight end. Options are Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Jordan Addison, and McBride. Puka Nico on IR. Sorry for that, but you are going to get Puka back soon. Do you think it's enough to make me win? Yes, I do. So first of all, of that, the only person I'm leaving out there is Jordan Addison. I feel a little bit weird about that, but I'm not going to leave out Trey McBride with the target share going up against Miami and what I expect to be a second half, comeback or have to throw the comeback for the Arizona Cardinals. Drake London goes without saying, but Darnell Mooney lit up Tampa Bay the last time he played him, and he's just been a really good complement in this offense. I expect him to have a strong game in this one, where Addison is still a bit hit or miss as we go into that Thursday night game, even though he has a nice matchup as well. But we saw Jalen Naylor kind of get involved. TJ Hawkinson actually might be back. I think he's got a better chance than Puka to come back in this one. So things could get interesting in Minnesota on that Thursday night game. So I go London, Mooney, and McBride. All right, Chase, let's go to you. Who is your crush of the week?
Crush of the week, again, somebody we kind of have mentioned already, but it's going to be J.K. Dobbins this week. He didn't necessarily shoot the lights out last week, but again, as we mentioned, it's a New Orleans defense that gives up the 5th most points to their opposing running backs. Last 3 weeks, again, big games to Javonte Williams, same game to Sean Tucker and Bucky Irving, and then also Kareem Hunt. The offense in New Orleans has been absolutely offensive, to borrow a phrase there from our friend Chris. And, that should lead to plenty of running back opportunities in this game. Like I said, for both Vidal and Dobbins, fire them both up. But J.K. Dobbins, he's a crush of the week for me.
Yeah, I love that. So I left him for a bounce back. Jonathan came back into the chat. Do I trade Kelsey for Brian Thomas or Terry McLaurin? He was asking for about Puka before. I'm going to sum this up for you, John. Because of the Titans you have with Otten and Jake Ferguson, if you can trade Travis Kelsey for a wide receiver 1 or 2, go ahead and just pull the trigger. I don't really care what the name is from that standpoint. Let's get to my crush. It's another running back, actually. Javonte Williams. And I had to bring this guy up because I've been a defender of Javonte Williams for a very long time. And people crapped on him last year when he was trying to come back from a completely torn knee. Didn't understand why. People were trying to talk about oh no, Aldrich Estime, Tyler Beatty, there's Jaleel McLaughlin, Sean Payton's going to have a 3-man carousel. And it's just been the opposite since Estime's come back. Javonte Williams has taken a stranglehold over this backfield. He's not even just the first and second down goal line back, guys. He leads the team in targets. He's got 14% of the targets, 50% of the carries since week 4. That is an RB2. And he gets the Carolina friggin' Panthers, who if you have 2 running backs on the same team, they can go off. We saw Tyler Algier and Brian Robinson. They're so historically bad against the run. Javonte Williams is a must-play. Lock him in your lineup this week. With that, we got to go to the flip side. We got to get a little negative. We got to tell you who to avoid this week, even though they might typically be in your lineup. And Adam, I got to say, I don't like yours for personal reasons, but I can't argue with it too much. Go ahead.
Look, this Lions run defense has been hit or miss. Aaron Jones just tore the crap out of him. And Kenneth Walker had a very good game against them. They bottled up James Conner. Kyron Williams had under 3 yards per carry. They've had some good, they've had some bad. I think what is more concerning here than the run defense, which has been, I would say, above average, right? Not unbeatable, right? Again, Aaron Jones at his age still beat up on him. Kenneth Walker didn't beat up on any run defense in the league, so we can throw him away. Like, that doesn't matter. But Aaron Jones, I think, is a real knock on them, right? What I think is scary is that this Titans team is not as good as the Vikings. So staying in the game where the game script is going to allow you to feed a running back that long. Like, look, the Lions are not one of these teams that lets you hang in just for fun. They will put teams squarely away when given the opportunity. And Will Levis has been the quarterback this season that will give you the opportunity to put this team away. And will do so rather quickly. I'm concerned that this gets away from them and the volume is gone. And with him being a guy, look, even last week, Pollard got 6 targets. So I'm not saying that, you can't salvage that. I'm just saying that I'm very concerned on them being able to get in the end zone. And then you're just kind of looking for a couple points here and there. If you're in PPR, maybe you can, again, salvage something with those targets. But half point or standard, I'm staying away.
Yeah. No, I got him I actually ranked him as an RB3 this week. Now, he's still probably my flex territory, but I'm kind of with you. He's not in my top 24. I'm not locking him in. And I understand it's scary, especially with Tajay Spears possibly returning.
Flex territory, sure. And let me throw this clear. I'm basing this off the ECR of 23, which I think is maybe 10 too high. If you want to tell me 33, sure, fine.
All right. So Tony Pollard's a sit for Adam, a bust for Adam. Chase, what do you have? Who are you worried about this week?
I'm gonna buck the trend with a guy that's been picking up steam in terms of his popularity here this season so far, but I'm going to go with Brian Thomas Jr. there for Jacksonville, and not just because I'm a big Packer fan. Here, we've seen this Packer defense just last week held CJ Stroud to 86 yards passing there, played a great game. Jair Alexander's a menace against opponents' wide receiver ones. The rest of that defensive backfield for the Packers is playing well too. Brian Thomas has kind of been on one lately, but a couple weeks ago, Chicago showed that a good pass defense can limit that offense still. That offense has been kind of rounding into its own here the last 3 weeks. Trevor Lawrence looks like he might be kind of working his way out of that funk, but Green Bay and Chicago pressure opposing passers at similar rates here. I expect that Packers defense to get home a couple of times here against Trevor Lawrence. It could be a long day for Jaguar pass catchers of all stripes or spots, I guess, because they're Jaguars. Christian Kirk has kind of faded into oblivion, it seems like, and he's a real popular name if you've been looking at people start 'em, sit 'em type lists this week. Christian Kirk's a popular name on that, but Brian Thomas Jr., he's been real good lately, but he might find some tough sledding here against his Packers defense this week. I'm not necessarily sure why this game has the highest over-under of the entire week here. Brian Thomas Jr. is not somebody I'm excited about starting this week.
I do have him as a borderline wide receiver 2 at wide receiver 23, so I am lower than ECR. Look, you skipped over the best part, and as a Packers fan, I'm surprised that you would skip over this part, but the best thing the Packers did was they benched Eric Stokes for Nixon, and all of a sudden, they can actually cover on the backside of Jerry Alexander. I mean, it's just a mystery to me how that works, but that's exactly what's going on right now, and why the Packers are not the leaky sieve that they were maybe a few weeks ago. The one thing I still have Brian Thomas in my top 24 for the simple reason of his target share has been too good, and he's been really good himself, and it just takes. They're going to have to throw a lot, I think, in the second half. I think it's why the over-under is as big as it is, because Jacksonville can't stop anything the Packers are going to throw at them this weekend, and they're going to have to come back from behind. So I do think the volume is going to be there. But I'm with you. This is not the juicy matchup that it would have been a few weeks ago. So on you for calling that out. Okay, let's get to this. And I mean, maybe I was a little bit happy that I could make this guy my bust. Just, I'll freely admit I'm a hater of this player, okay? But he's been fantastic this year. I'm a little surprised that I got the opportunity to make him my bust this week, given what's going on around him. Baker Mayfield, ECR still has him as a QB 10. I like Jalen McMillan, guys. I do. I like Kate Otten, even. But this Atlanta defense is not the Jacksonville Jaguars, not the Carolina Panthers. This is at least a middle-of-the-pack defense, and you're not going to have Mike Evans. You're not going to have Chris Godwin. Baker Mayfield's the QB2 overall because he leads the league in touchdowns. Mike Evans has double-digit red zone targets, double the next guy behind him, okay? You lost the big factor there. Other than Kate Otten, McMillan, Trey Palmer, Sterling Shepard, you don't have a red zone target available to you, and then you lose Chris Godwin here on top of it. So that's where I don't see where or how Mayfield should be getting played as a top 12 quarterback this week. Now, if he comes out this week and proves us all wrong, not only eat my words, but you could go ahead and plug him back into your lineup. Go ahead and feel free. But I'm finding another option. There's nobody on bye this week. There's probably a better option than Baker Mayfield in your lineups for this particular week. I got him ranked at my QB 18. And that wraps up for my bust. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. That's going to do it for us today. We are going to be back next week at 9:30, like we always are with our Week 9 preview. But I'll be back with Dr. Brian Scott tomorrow at 8 p.m. on the Fantasy Football Advice Network, on Twitter, on Facebook Live. You can get our questions in. If you go to Facebook Live, you can get our questions in there. We'll drop that video and drop the podcast on Friday morning. Make sure you check out Operation Domination on your favorite podcast apps. Follow Chase Thornton, Adam LaRue, and myself, Dan Mader, on social media. Will help you guys out. And make sure you go in and download the Fantasy Football Advice Network app. Because if you do that, you join our community. You can get 24/7 fantasy sports, not just football. We're in full swing now. Hockey, basketball, my lineups are all set for those sports too. We got content for you guys of all the sports. So make sure you check that out as well. And we'll see you guys real soon. Hey there, I want to thank you for watching Operation Domination today. And if you're enjoying the show, there are some ways you can help support us. You can go to podchaser.com/Operation Domination and leave us a 5-star review. And you can do this on any podcast platform or on our YouTube page when you go to @FF Advice Network. This completely helps out the show be able to grow, and also leave us comments to let us know how we can curtail the show to you, because you are the most important member of the show. So again, go to podchaser.com/Operation Domination to leave a 5-star review and leave a comment wherever you listen or watch the show, and we'll help better serve you. Just let me end it.